oh boy, you're going to be so excited.
This book is a little bit of Christian missionary propaganda.
And he perhaps is based upon a well-known literary figure, or perhaps even a historical figure.
Now, didymus is simply the Greek word for twin. It's also used as the Greek word for testicles, for obvious reasons. There are usually two of them.
She kissed them.
Your fruit shall be without root, and your shoots shall be dried up like a branch scorched by a strong wind.
How many of you find this child Jesus an adorable, little, cute little baby? Nobody? Good.
I sprinkled my body with the bathwater that his mother had used to wash him off, and in that instant I was healed.
Greetings, fellow worker slaves, podcasting at 128 kilobits from the Fortress of Squalitude, located not far from the Redneck Mecca. This is the Atheist in the Trailer Park podcast. I'm your host, Tucker. Professor Fuzznuts and Buddha are wandering around the living room, getting into who knows what. Ash and Lord Squeaking Tin are in my room. Yes, it's a podcast hosted by a guy and his cats. Get over it. This is a Gnostic text episode where Skullbeard and I read from a few sections of the Acts of Paul, which I still haven't been able to figure out if it should be called the Acts of Paul or the Acts of Paul and Thecla. But whatever. So, I am back. Patreon supporters got a nice bonus episode over the weekend. But I had a few things come up that have thrown everything into a little bit of disarray, some of which the Patreon supporters know about, and the rest of you are about to find out. Because it's not good, some of it. Fortunately, it's not a direct issue with me, but it's still not good. Okay, let me start with what happened with last week, since I was off. I did a few things around the house, and I'll actually be having an episode coming up in a while that details some of the stuff for reasons that I will get into on that episode. But the other things that came up were rather unexpected and went downhill from there in some cases. So I'm getting rid of some of the crap that my idiot roommate Nimrod left behind when he moved out. And I found a round of .45 ammunition that he had left. And the casing was damaged. It was also covered with something. I'm not sure what. Now, this is a problem that can make the round unstable and cause it to potentially explode. Not a good thing. So I naturally decide I'm going to go to the Googles to figure out what the hell I should do with this, because I really don't like the idea of a round of ammunition being in the house and about to go off at potentially any moment. All the websites that I went to, and I even went to like the NRA's website looking for information, and they all basically had the same thing when it came to finding ammunition you did not expect to find. First of all, they mansplained to you exactly what it was that you had found, because they don't like, for some silly reason, you referring to a round of ammunition as a bullet, and they, would spend paragraphs explaining to you, no, the bullet is the lead thing on the end of the ammunition. If you find just a bullet, it's nothing. It's just a hunk of lead. But if you've got the shell, casing, and the bullet together, that means that's a round of ammunition and it's potentially live. Now, what should you do if you find rounds of ammunition? Well, they all suggested that you immediately go out and buy yourself a gun and learn how to shoot it. That's the best way to get rid of it, they said. And they, said, well, check it if it's, look at this and look at that, because if it's really old, you may not want to do that. Okay. And if it's really old and you don't want to do it, you can't fire it through a gun, you need to either take it to a mom and pop gun shop, not a big chain store. You take it to the mom and pop gun shop and they'll be happy to dispose of it for you. Or you should take it to the police department. Now, you can call them and they will come out, but bear in mind that not every police department is set up to handle all this. So if you live in a smallish town, that may be an issue. And they all said, whatever you do, don't bury it. So I'm like, well, there's no way the local Bubba Squad's going to come out for a single bullet. Not to mention, they're going to ask questions like, why don't you want this bullet? Whose bullet is it? Where did they get it? Blah, blah, blah. Shit, I don't want to have to deal with. Even if I don't like Nimrod. Well, maybe we should come in and search your place for more ammunition. No, fuck you. And I really don't want to take it down to the police station because, I have to put it on my person. And, no matter how well I packed it, it could potentially get jostled around. And if it goes off, well, even if the bullet doesn't go through me, I could still have a very bad day. If I had a car, I could surround it with some bricks in the trunk and things like that and make sure it's unlikely to get jostled. And if it does get jostled, it doesn't do any significant damage. So after looking at all that shit, I'm like, okay, I know a guy who is a sensible person when it comes to guns. He's also ex-military and ex-combat veteran, got back from Iraq and Afghanistan a couple of years ago, so everything should be fresh in his mind. I'm going to message him and see what he has to say about it. So I do. And his response was, I don't know, man, bury it. Right. So you have a member of the U.S. military who does not know how to properly dispose of ammunition in a situation, or even tell me how to identify, yeah, you're at really a high risk of that thing going off. And if you're going to get rid of it, this is what you need to do to safely transport it, something like that. No, he didn't have any answers. And he admits, he's like, sorry, I just don't know. So the only thing I could think of was, I remember there was an episode of Mythbusters where they decided to see if this scene in some stupid Chuck Norris movie where he hides from guys firing like a 50 caliber automatic weapon at him by diving into a river, and he was not very far under the water. And they said, well, we'll see if this, if that's actually possible. And sure enough, it turns out, yeah, it is actually possible if your bullets are slowed down by water, which reminded me that I was watching a movie about them. I guess it was Helter Skelter, because it was about Manson. And they were showing how they got the round to do a ballistics test on a gun, check the rifling on the bullet. And they had a cylinder that was a couple of feet high, and they mounted the gun above the cylinder, closed the top of the cylinder, and fired the bullet. And the cylinder was filled with water, so the bullet hit the water and slowed down. And so I was like, okay, I need something that I can put that in and slow it down if it doesn't decide to go off. So I got a bunch of silicone caulk and a plastic container, and I filled the plastic container with the caulk and the bullet, and I'm going to bury it deep when I get a chance. I had hoped to do it one day last week, but the days, all but one day that I'm could do it on after I discovered it, it fucking rained during the times of the day when it would be best to do it. You know, when there was daylight, and it wasn't 90 fucking degrees or more. The other thing that happened last week that really threw me off is a former roommate of mine by the name of Tasha stopped by, and she gets out. I'm going out to the store to get something when she stops by, and I literally almost slam into her as I'm walking around the house. And she's looking kind of disheveled, and she's asking if she can move back in. Well, I've been homeless before. I know what that's like. I'm sure. She was a good roommate when she was here, so I don't have to worry too much about her. And then I noticed, and I figured from the way she looked, it looked like she hadn't been sleeping very well. And then as we're talking along, I realized that she has had some kind of mental breakdown, because she starts talking about mythological beings as if they were real, and saying that there was a war in heaven, and that she had, in 2018, she had become a vessel for something from all the supreme beings of every religion you can think of. And she was there, her mission in life now was to try to calm the war in heaven. And she would periodically talk to these mythological beings as if they were there while we were conversing. I mean, she literally at one point said, I'm going to tell Tucker about this. I think he'll like this. Yeah. And then, she left because she needed to go to work. And as she was getting in her car, and I don't think she even noticed I was outside at that point, she pointed at the air in front of her and said, "You got ratted out by a cartoon character? That's so funny." And she was supposed to come back by here and start moving in, but I haven't seen her since. So I don't know what's happened. I don't know if she found another place to live, managed to work things out at her current place, or what. Or if she's just gone totally off the deep end. And I don't have contact information for any of her family to talk to them about it, although I don't know if they'd believe me. I've met her dad and her stepmother, and they're, Harry Anderson, the guy who played the judge on Night Court. He was a big atheist, and then he met this woman who was a devout Christian and married her, and he just stopped being an atheist and stopped everything because, he had to do what she wanted him to do for whatever reason. That's the way her dad apparently got after he married her stepmother. And so even if I found him, I don't know how he would respond, because his stepmother, or his current wife, is she's not a very pleasant woman, but he's just married to her and devoted to her for whatever reason. So I can't file a missing persons report because I haven't seen her in about 10 years, not quite 10 years. And then she shows up and starts saying this stuff that's, that's not, I don't have enough connection with her to be able to file one and have it, have them take it seriously, simply because they're like, well, it's not like she was living there and then just disappeared. She showed up one day and never came back, and that's what people do sometimes. So, the only thing I could do is I've set up a Google alert under her name, because her full name is rather unusual. As a matter of fact, every hit on Google ties back to her. So if she makes the news because she's found dead or something. At least I'll know. I know that's a bit of a bummer. I do have a bit of a good news, at least for me. I picked up a new Patreon supporter this month. Scott has joined at the $2 level. I thank you for that. And as I said, Patreon supporters, you will be getting a bunch this month. Part of it is all dependent upon what the cats let me do, because somebody likes napping on my reference material when I'm trying to use it. And Fuzznuts is giving me strange looks because he wants to come over here, but he's really shy and insecure because yesterday was not wet food day. It was flea medicine day, and so he still doesn't trust me. But he's not quite as timid as he has been in the past after it. So I guess it went better for him last time than it did the time before. All right. And I don't know why my voice is so fucked up. Anyways, this is what I can tell you coming up for everybody here. This episode is, like I said, me and Skullbeard. Next episode, I will have a guest, potentially 2 guests. All depends on how the editing goes, because somebody popped in for a few minutes to say hi, and I'll leave that as a bit of a surprise as to who both of them were, or even just the one. Because, like I said, I don't know how the editing's going to go on that. Because, again, we talked forever about a whole bunch of shit. So, that's what y'all have to look forward to. And, one other thing is, the reason this episode is late is that I had planned to record with the guest for next week on Saturday. Well, my next-door neighbors had a nice, loud party, which kind of bleeds through because I don't have a good formal studio setup here. So I was like, I can't cut the episode today, but no big deal. Cut it on Sunday, and I figured I'd cut this one on Sunday night. Well, things went longer on Sunday than I planned, but no big deal because I knew that I was coming in to work on Monday at noon, and if I got up at my usual time, I would have ample time to get this done. Then work sent me a text message and told me to be in at 9 a.m. instead of noon. Well, that just blew everything. So that's why this one is late. And still have no idea what we're going to be working here in the near future. We didn't do a whole lot today. I mean, it was about an average day. So kind of what you'd expect for coming back to work. Fun thing. We walked into one of the prep areas, and they have refrigeration units mounted in the ceiling of the prep areas. Because basically I work in a giant refrigerator to prep the meat, and then we put it in a giant oven. Well, I look, and they often drop when we're going to be shut down for a while, they drop the lower covers on the units so that they can clean them out while we're off. And it looked like, hey, you two. Well, it's not some Buddha or play fighting. It looked like that they had forgotten to fully fasten the cover. And I just walked around and said, oh, no, the unit the bolts in the ceiling holding the unit up on one side have come out, and that's why it's sagging. So I immediately got the manager and said, that needs to be fixed. And they, I guess, fixed it. I mean, they did fix it, but boy, really like them to have pulled the whole unit down and inspected everything and then redid it, but that's not what they did. So that leaves me a little nervous. Maybe that they'll do that the next time we're off, which will almost certainly be next month, if not sometime this month. All right, that's enough of my blathering. Let's get to Skullbeard and I reading more from the Acts of Paul, and possibly the Acts of Paul and Thecla, if that's what it's really supposed to be called.
All right, so part 3 of the Acts of Paul. When he was departed from Antioch and taught at Myra, when Paul was teaching the word of God in Myra, there was there a man, Hermiorates by name, and who had the dropsy, and he put himself forward in the sight of all and said to Paul, "Nothing is impossible with God, but especially with him whom thou preachest. For when he came, he healed many, even that God whose servant thou art. Lo, I and my wife and my children, we cast ourselves at thy feet. Have pity on me, that I also may believe as thou hast believed on the living God."
And dropsy is most commonly associated today with congestive heart failure. Other things can cause it, but that's, the thing that everybody would think of that matches the symptoms.
I did not know that.
I knew
Not
it
even
was,
sure what dropsy is.
yeah, I knew it was something.
Old-fashioned or less technical term for edema.
Yeah. Which is fluid retention.
Swelling caused by fluid in your body's tissues, usually in the feet, ankles, and legs, but it can involve your entire body. Oh.
Paul said unto him, I will restore thee thine health, not for reward, but through the name of Jesus Christ, thou shalt become whole in the presence of all these. And he touched his body, drawing his hands downwards. And his belly opened, and much water ran from him. And he fell down like a dead man, so that some said, It is better for him to die than to continue in pain. But when Paul had quieted the people, he took his hand and raised him up and asked him, saying, Hermocrates, I'm going to call him Hermocrates, ask for what thou desirest. And he said, I would eat. And he took a loaf and gave him to eat. And in that hour he was whole, and received the grace of the seal in the Lord. And then it just abruptly ends. Who the fuck knows?
But Hermippus, his son, was angry with Paul, sought for a set time wherein to rise up with them of his own age and destroy him. For he wished that his father should not be healed, but should die, that he might soon be master of his goods. But Dion, his younger son, heard Paul gladly. Now all they that were with Hermippus took counsel to fight against Paul, so that Hermippus had sought to kill him. Dion fell down and died, but Hermippus watered Dion with his tears. Fucking pansy.
It's just a strange...
Oh no. Does that mean Dion is a wet ass?
Well, have you seen the photo of the Trump boat sinking and somebody putting wet ass pussies over it?
Yes, I saw that one. That Poseidon for Biden. And
Yeah.
Antiphon naval submarine stuff went around, and
Oh God. If we weren't on the verge of civil war, it'd be really hysterical.
yeah. Well, the thing is, It was the rich bastards in the big-ass boats creating huge wakes that swamped the little boats.
Yeah.
Which is a perfect metaphor for the entire
Country.
fucking administration
Yeah.
in the last 4 years.
Yeah. And, I mean, that was, in some of the photos, that part of the lake must have been really narrow. Because you could see both sides, and they weren't all that far apart.
Yeah, no. So, okay, yeah, sure, whatever.
Yeah, okay.
Idiots.
But Hermocrates mourned sore, for he loved Dion more than his other son. Yet he sat at Paul's feet and forgot that Dion was dead. But when Dion was dead, his mother Nympha rent her clothes and went unto Paul and set herself before the face of Hermocrates, her husband, and of Paul. And when Paul saw her, he was affrighted and said, Wherefore art thou thus, Nympha? But she said unto him, Dion is dead, and the whole multitude wept when they beheld her. And Paul looked upon the people that mourned, and sent young men, saying to them, Go and bring me him hither. And they went. But Hermippus caught hold of the body of Dion in the street and cried out. A leaf lost, which I'm guessing is a leaf of the manuscript. The word...
Oh, you gonna take that one?
Yeah.
Take it. Oh, shit.
The word in him, them, but an angel of the Lord had said unto him in the night, Paul, thou hast today a great conflict against thy body, but God, the Father of his Son, Jesus Christ, will... It just ends there.
The fuck? This is poorly curated. When Paul had arisen, he went unto his brethren and remained sorrowful, saying, What meaneth this vision? And while Paul thought upon this, he saw Hermippus coming. Okay. Having a sword drawn in his hand, and with him many other young men with staves. And Paul said unto them, I am not a robber, neither a murderer. The God of all things, the Father of Christ, will turn your hand backward, and your sword into its sheath, and your strength into weakness. For I am a servant of God, though I be alone and a stranger, and small, and of no reputation among the Gentiles. But do thou, O God, look down upon their counsel, and suffer me not to be brought to naught by them.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, it's a mouthful.
And when Hermippus ran upon Paul with his sword drawn, straightway he ceased to see, so that he cried out aloud, saying, My dear comrades, forget not your friend Hermippus, for I have sinned, O Paul. I have pursued after innocent blood. Learn, ye foolish, and ye of understanding, that this world is not, gold is not, all money is not. I, that glutted myself with all manner of goods, am now a beggar, and entreat of you all. Hearken to me, all ye my companions, and every one that dwelleth in Myra. I have mocked at a man who hath saved my father. I have mocked at a man who hath raised my brother Dion. So apparently that happened in one of the missing sections. I have mocked at a man who, without doing me any evil, but entreat ye of him. Behold, he hath saved my father and raised up my brother. He is able therefore to save me also. Okay, but Paul stood there weeping alike before God, for that he heard him quickly, and brought him to the place where Paul was teaching, and laid him down. Wait, no.
Yeah, I
But
think you skipped.
yeah, I did. But Paul stood there weeping alike before God, for that he heard him quickly, and before man, for that the proud was brought low, and he turned himself and went up. But the young men took the feet and bore Hermippus and brought him to the place where Paul was teaching, and laid him down before the door and went unto their house. Makes no goddamn sense, because they're all charging Paul, and then somehow Paul's somewhere else, and they take this dude there. How does that? None of that makes any sense. I realize there's portions of the text missing, but you gotta have almost a fucking novel to explain.
Oh, yeah.
These changes. And when they were gone, a great multitude came to the house of Hermocrates, and another great multitude entered in to see whether Hermippus were shut up there. And Hermippus besought everyone that went in that they would entreat Paul with him. But Paul was already bawling his fucking eyes out over this guy being blind.
And we need like the Cliff Notes version of
It's
this.
something, man. But they that went in saw Hermocrates and Nympha. Yeah, that's what I would have named my wife, Nympha. How they rejoiced greatly at the raising up of Dion, and distributed victuals and money unto the widows for his recovery. What the fuck is this about? And they beheld Hermippus, their son, in the state of this second affliction. Wait, so something besides being blind happened to him? And how he took hold on the feet of everyone, and on the feet of his parents also, and prayed them, as one of the strangers, that he might be healed. And his parents were troubled. Well, duh. And lamented to everyone that came in, so that some said, Wherefore do these weep? Gee, I don't know, your kid's blind and apparently a cripple, begging in the street. Why the fuck would that cause you to cry? For Dion is arisen, but Hermocrates possessed goods, and brought the value of the goods, and took it, and distributed it. And Hermocrates, troubled in mind, and desiring that they might be satisfied, said, Brethren, let us leave the food, and occupy ourselves. Hermocrates. And immediately Nympha cried out in great affliction unto Paul. They said, Nympha, Hermocrates, call upon God, that your son Hermippus may see and cease to grieve, for he hath resisted Christ and his minister. But they and Paul prayed to God. And when Hermippus recovered his sight, he turned to himself to his mother Nympha, and said to her, Paul came unto me and laid his hand upon me while I wept, and in that hour I saw all things clearly. And she shook his hand, and led him unto the widows and Paul. But while Paul wept bitterly, Hermippus gave thanks, saying unto him, Every one that believeth shall be gone. Concord in peace. Amen. And when Paul had confirmed the brethren that were in Myra, he departed unto Sidon.
When he was departed from Myra. Now, when Paul was departed from Myra and would go unto Sidon, there was great sadness of the brethren that were in Pisidia and Pamphylia, because they yearned after his word and his holy appearance in Christ, so that some from Perga followed Paul, namely Thrasymachus and Cleon, with their wives Aline and Chryssa, Cleon's wife. And on the way they nourished Paul, and they were eating their bread under a tree. And as he was about to say amen, there came, 5 lines broken, the word the brethren and idol occur. Table of devils! He died, he dieth therefore, but every one that believeth on Jesus Christ, who hath saved us from all defilement, and all uncleanness, and all evil thoughts, he shall be manifest. And they drew near unto the table. 3 lines broken, idol occurs. Stood a mighty idol, and an old man stood up among them, saying unto them, Ye men, wait a little and see what befalleth the priest which would draw near unto our gods. For verily, when our fellow citizen Charinus hearkened and would something against the gods, there died he and his father, and thereupon died Xanthus also. Chrysa and Hermocrates died, sick of the dropsy, and his wife Nympha. And there's at least 2 missing pages.
Yeah. And there is, and this is the first time, I don't remember if I mentioned this or not, but the first time I ever heard the term Sidon, there was a science fiction story in Asimov's science fiction magazine, which one of the few things my stepmother ever got right was she subscribed that, gave me a subscription to that for years. And anyways, there was a story in one issue called The Sidon in the Mirror by Connie Willis. And I could never figure out the story. So, because basically what it is, there's this advanced civilization, right?
Okay.
And they somehow have the ability to change stars so that they can put mining operations on them.
Okay.
Yeah, they shut down the fusion reactions or whatever, and they set down mining operations, but the stars don't completely cool down. And it was just really fucking weird, made no fucking sense at all. And I was like, what the hell does Sidon mean? And we had this giant Random House dictionary of the English language that was 6 inches thick. So that's roughly 10 centimeters for those of you in the civilized parts of the world.
4 inches, 10 centimeters. Yeah, it'd be about 15 centimeters.
Right. And I looked that up, and it didn't really have a definition, and it didn't make any sense. And I mean, it was just really weird because they, there was, they had this mining operation, and there was this guy there, and the thing that, they spoke in this weird dialect, and the thing that sticks in my mind is they're walking outside the spaceship going to a building or something on the star that they've somehow managed to cool everything down on, and one of the characters says to the other one, touch the surface, and that character does, wearing a spacesuit, mind you. He pulls his hand back, it's like, that's hot. And it goes, and the first character says, yeah, you're supposed to be able to pick money off the surface. It's so cool, but that's not true. And that's just weird, and that's the only time I've encountered Sidon, and even looking shit up now, it still doesn't make any goddamn sense to me at all.
That's the 3rd largest city in Lebanon.
Yeah. But why the fuck does it matter for the science fiction novel or short story or this thing?
Yeah, it's got a cool name.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the only thing I've read by Connie Willis that I can remember. So I may have read other stuff, but I don't remember. All right. Paul is speaking. After the manner of strange men, wherefore presume ye to do that which is not seemly? Or have ye not heard of that which came to pass? Drink! Which God brought upon Sodom and Gomorrah, because they robbed. And, sodomy is bad, but you can Gomorrah all you want.
Uh-huh.
After the manner of strangers and of women. Okay. God did not blank, blank, blank them, but cast them down into hell. Now therefore we are not men of this fashion that ye say, nor such as ye think, but we are preachers of the living God and his beloved. Who would his beloved be? I wonder.
Holy Spirit?
Possibly, or humanity, or Jeebus, or somebody else we don't know about anymore. But that ye may not marvel, understand the miracles which bear witness for us. But they hearkened not unto him, but took the men and put them into the temple of Apollo, to keep them until the morrow, whereon they assembled the whole city, and many and costly were the victuals that they gave them. And I have to point out, I am always surprised when I discover that somebody doesn't know what the hell victuals are.
Isn't that like food?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was listening to ages ago. I had to give up on it because, wow, it was just so fucking terrible. There was a podcast called Android Buffet. And one of the co-hosts was a normal sounding guy, and the other co-host was clearly somebody who was on the spectrum.
Okay.
And I'm not, trying to be derisive at all when I say that. The dude was definitely on the spectrum, and the podcast was fairly interesting. And then the guy who was on the spectrum was talking about how he discovered what victuals meant. And I was like, well, that's kind of odd, I mean, of course, I grew up in like the 80s when they had computer games that, victuals was the thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then he was talking about the fact that he had decided that year he was going to actually try to keep kosher.
Okay.
He was Jewish and it was Passover, and so he was going to keep kosher for Passover. And to do this, he was doing it, and then he decided, no, he needed to buy a set of dishes, because prior to this, he was using paper plates, and he was like having 4 or 5 trash bags worth of garbage a day, because in order to keep kosher the way, he was traditionally raised, you couldn't have food on, different kinds of food on the plate, so you were having to use all these different plates.
Yep.
And it was like, what the fuck, dude? And I just finally had to give up listening to it because of things like that. I mean, it was just so weird. And it was like, and I'm listening to this, and he's talking about, well, I bought dishes because I decided for the first time in my life I was going to keep kosher, and that required me to do all this stuff. And I'm like, why?
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it really was.
Some people are weirder than others.
Yep.
But Paul, who was fasting now the 3rd day, testified all the night long, being troubled, and smote his face, and said, O God, look down upon their threatenings, and suffer us not to slide, and let not our adversaries cast us down, but save us, and bring down quickly thy righteousness upon us, And as Paul cast himself down with the brethren Thrasymachus and Cleon, then the temple fell.
Because
So-
of course it did.
Yeah. They didn't build things so good back in the day. so that they that belonged to the temple and the magistrates that were set over it, who knows, because it's missing. Others of them in the fucked if I know, for the one part fell down. Fell down. Roundabout in the midst of the two parts, and they went in and beheld what had happened and marveled that the fucked if I know in their haven't got a clue, and that the another blank here rejoiced over the falling of the temple, and they cried out saying, "Verily these are the works of the men of a mighty God." And they departed and proclaimed in the city, "Apollo, the god of the Sidonians, is fallen, and the half of his temple." And all the dwellers in the city ran to the temple and saw Paul and them that were with him, how they wept at this temptation, that they were made a spectacle for all men. But the multitude cried out, bring them into the theater. And the magistrates came to fetch them, and they groaned bitterly with one soul. And then they lost the next 2 pages.
Yep. And I will take everything to the V.
All right.
Paul is speaking. Through me consider 9 lines much broken, the way of life of Christ, not in the faith occur. Egyptians, and they, but the multitude, and followed after Paul, crying, Praised be the God who hath sent Paul, that we should not of death, but Theudes, and prayed at Paul's feet, and embraced his feet, that he should give him the seal in the Lord. Yeah. But he commanded them to go to Tyre, which is in France, if I'm not mistaken.
Nope. Tyre, that's Lebanon.
Okay. In health.
Oh, Tyre is a great place to get sidetracked.
Okay.
God smote the city and said, never again will people live here. And,
Yet they
well,
do.
it's a bustling city of like 250,000 people or some shit like that.
Yeah. In health or farewell, and they put Paul in a ship and went with him. The purpose of confining Paul and his companions in the temple appears to have been connected with the sins of the cities of the plain of which Paul speaks. That sounds like an editorial comment by the modern translator, but there's nothing to indicate that is what's going on there. The Acts of Titus, quoted before, have a sentence referring to this and the next episode. And Paul healed Apphia, the wife of Chrysippus, who was possessed with the devil, and fasting for 7 days, he overthrew the idol of Apollo. The Acts placed this immediately after the conversion and preaching at Damascus, and put the pain hairs episode later. Whatever the fuck that is. They are not to be trusted, therefore, as a guide to the order of our book. Makes no fucking sense at all. Yeah,
this is one of the more
gibberishy.
Yes, of the things we've read.
And that's saying something considering what we've read.
Ethiopian Maccabees comes to mind.
Yeah. But I was somebody was on Twitter, and I wish I could remember who it was. They were quoting some bizarro crap that had the idea that there are a small number of demons in the universe. And the reason you don't see so much about possession anymore is because there's so many people. And their idea was that you save humanity from demonic possession by having more and more people on the planet, because there's only, like, let's say, 1,000 demons capable of possessing people. So they can only possess folks for a short period of time before they have to move on if they really want to fuck shit up.
Okay.
Yeah, I know. It was one of those things that you're just reading, you're like, wow. that is some that's some crazy shit there, dude.
That's some David Icke level shit.
Mm-hmm.
All right. When he was departed out of Sidon, and would go unto Tyre. Now, when Paul was entered unto Tyre, there came a multitude of Jews into him. Sorry, I see you had a mouthful there.
Yeah, there's a break in the thing, and so that's not what they originally wrote, but that's what we're left with.
These, and they heard the mighty works. They marveled, Amphia of the Acts of Titus, saying, in Chrysippus, devil with him, many. When Paul came, he said, he, God, and will not be an evil spirit in Amphion, through the evil spirit, without anyone's having. She said to him, save me that I die not. And while the multitude, then arose the other evil spirit, and forthwith the devils fled away. And when the multitude saw this, by the power of God, they praised him who had given such power unto Paul. And there was there one by name Remus, who had a son born to him which was dumb.
I'm sorry.
Well, it's obviously truncated.
Yeah, okay, sure.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, and it occurs to me there can't be just 1,000 demons, because there were 2,000 demons in the pigs that Jesus ran over the cliff into the lake.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I was giving 1,000 as a...
Yeah, well, okay. It just struck me as, hey, wait a minute. That's not enough.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That long stretch of single lines, which seem to contain a large number of unannotated margin notes.
On the next page is a proper name, Lix, or perhaps Killix, a Sicilian, not spelled the way you would expect Sicilian to be spelled.
Celestial?
Yeah, I guess that would be it. And later the words, I preach the good tidings of the Savior, Son of God. On the next page.
Still playing that shtick.
Yeah. Lix perhaps occurs again, and Moses. The next begins, for that which we say cometh to pass forthwith, behold, we will bring him hither unto thee, that he may thee to hear the truth of thy... Okay. Next page. On God, whose desire is to come to pass in him, drink. This is the wise man, the Father, and he hath sent Jesus Christ. Next page. Turned toward the east, Moses, in Syria, in Cyrene. Again, I say unto you, I that do the works, that a man is not justified by the law, but that he is justified by the works of righteousness, and he blank, blank, blank. Next page has the words liberty and the yoke. All flesh and everyone confesseth that Jesus Christ is the glory of the Father. Next page, lower part, is not water in him, but being water, I am not hungry, but I am thirsty. Boy, that's some meta shit right there, that water is thirsty for water. I am not, but not to suffer them to be devoured by wild beasts, not to be able, blank, 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 from the earth, but not to suffer from them to be burnt by the fire. Are these things of the present age testified he which was a persecutor? Oh.
Yeah. Your guess is as good as mine. There's way too many blanks in this.
I know, and my head is hurting.
Next page, lower part, Cleanthes, the law of God, which is called, who walketh here before them, hath he not followed us throughout all the cities? And when he turned himself toward the east after this, after 2 lines, such words neither preacheth he as thou preachest them, O Paul, that thou mayest not. Next page begins, thou art in the presence, sight, face of Jerusalem, but I trust in the Lord that thou wilt. The name Saul is almost certain some lines later. The next page begins, whom they crucified, and at the end, raised up our flesh. I hear they got a little blue pill for that.
Ooh.
Ooh. Next page, 7th line. For since the day when persecuted the apostles which were with me, Peter, out of Jerusalem, I hid myself that I might have comfort, and we nourished them which stand through the word according to the promise of his grace. I have fallen into many troubles and have subjected myself to the law as for your sakes, but thought by night and by day in my troubles on Jesus Christ, waiting for him as a lamb. When they crucified him, did not resist, was not troubled. And the above may be a speech of Peter. We have seen some indication that Paul is now at Jerusalem, and the conjecture is that dialogue between him and Peter occurred in this place. The next page undoubtedly mentions Peter. Okay, thanks. That's really helpful. Line 1 has Paul. Line 3, 12 shepherds. Line 5, through Paul, but was troubled because of the questioning examination that was come upon Peter, and he cried out, saying, Verily God is one, and there is no God beside him. One also is Jesus Christ, his Son, whom thou preachest did we crucify, whom accept in great glory that ye say that he is God and judge of the living and the dead, the King of the ages, in the form of man. Which makes absolutely no fucking sense.
Yeah. And in poking around, somehow the Acts of Titus are known because I can find references to the discussion of the topic, but this site where we're getting this text from apparently doesn't have a copy of it. Which Paul is condemned to the mines in an unknown place. But nobody knows what happened to Paul, so if this is true, that would be like a hugely remarkable thing. Longinus, the dude with the spear.
What?
Yeah. Longinus.
I'm gonna call him Longinus.
God damn it! What the? Hang on, I gotta pull up that shitty fucking movie. There we are.
What?
Um, God damn it. It's not that. Is it? It must be that. Maybe it's this. The Great Commandment. Longinus is supposedly the Roman soldier who stabbed Jesus with the spear.
Oh,
and
okay.
There is a movie called The Great Commandment. It's a 1939 movie. It is the first movie that actually features Jesus speaking.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's anyways, Longinus it is in The Great Commandment. Which, man, when you God, that's a really fucking stupid movie. it is. I mean, it's an interesting concept, and the whole reason they did the film the way they did was because the fundamentalists in the U.S. were convinced that movies were of the devil, so they wanted to do a religious movie to change people's minds, but they didn't want to commit a sacrilege of like showing Jesus on screen.
But yet he's speaking in the movie.
Right, but you don't actually see him or his face. It is just like Islam. It really is.
Oh, okay. So they don't want to be idolaters, and they'll go to extraordinary lengths to be hypocrites.
Right. No, it is. I mean, there are elements of the film that are really interesting. But it's because of God. There was the Hays Code in the U.S., which had these really strict rules, like you couldn't have a kiss on screen for more than 3 seconds.
Oh, okay, yeah,
and things like that, and so this was the first movie that dared to be feature Jesus at all. Even the other movies prior to this that were based around New Testament subjects never actually had Jesus on screen in any form.
Okay.
I mean, this you see like his shadow, you see like him from a distance. So, I mean, it's remarkable from that standpoint.
Superstitions.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy. Yeah, okay. Paul is condemned to the mines in an unknown place. Longinus and Familia have a daughter, Frontina, who is to be thrown down from a rock. That sounds very suspiciously similar to... Is it Iphigenia? God damn it. Agamemnon's daughter that he sacrifices to change the wind so they can go off to sack Troy. And Paul with her.
Oh.
You know who I'm talking about. God damn.
Maybe.
It is my distinct opinion that Fontina is already dead. Don't cry for me. I'm already dead. Her body is to be thus... What the fuck does that... I've never seen this word. I've never seen a variation of this word. I have to look this up. Continuously?
Ooh.
Continuous is insolently abusive and humiliating. Oh, wow. I would have picked that for my pseudonym if I'd have known about that word before this.
Yeah, that'd be a good one.
Yeah.
Actually.
Treated because she has become a Christian. The upper part of the page has Longinus twice in lines 1, 2, Paul in 1.7, then... Okay, well, what are these lines? Because it doesn't include them. It just says, well, it's got it mentioned, and it mentions Paul, and then we get this thing.
Did somebody find a burned book, or...
I don't know. For since the mine there hath not, nothing good hath befallen mine house. And he advised that the men which were to throw Frontina down should throw down Paul also with her alive. Now Paul knew these things, but he worked fasting in great cheerfulness for 2 days with the prisoners. They commanded that on the 3rd day the men should bring forth Frontina, and the whole city followed after her, and Familia, ask your doctor if Familia is right for your ED. And Longinus lamented, and the soldiers, blank, 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 but the prisoners carried the bed, beer, and when Paul saw the great mourning with the daughter, and ate, blank, 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 next page, line 8, Paul alive with the daughter. But when Paul had taken the daughter in his arms, he groaned unto the Lord Jesus Christ, because of the sorrow of Familia, and cast himself on his knees in the mire, praying for Frontina, with her in 1a prayer. In that hour Frontina rose up, and the whole multitude was afraid and fled. Paul took the hand of the daughter and led her through the city unto the house of Longinus, and the whole multitude said with one voice, God is one, who hath made heaven and earth, who hath granted life of the daughter in the presence of Paul, a loaf, and he gave thanks to him. Some lines later, to Philippi.
2 Corinthians. When he was departed from, and would go. Now when Paul was come to Philippi, he entered into the house of, and there was great joy among the brethren and to everyone. On the following page begins the episode of the correspondence with the Corinthians. Ooh, that was foreshadowing. Which was circulated separately in Syriac, Latin, and Armenian, and found a place in the Syriac collection of Pauline epistles, and is commented on with the rest of Ephraim the Syrian. And in the Armenian Bible, we have it in many Armenian manuscripts, I'm going to guess. In Ephraim's commentary, only extant in Armenian, in 3 Latin manuscripts at Milan, Leon, and Paris, as well as in the Coptic manuscript, which is here less fragmentary than in the preceding pages. Hooray! We begin with a short narrative introducing the letter of the Corinthians to Paul, then follows another short piece of narrative extant in Armenian only, then Paul's reply, commonly called the 3rd epistle to the Corinthians. There are various phrases and whole sentences, especially in the Armenian and the Milan manuscripts of the Latin, which are absent from the Coptic and Leon manuscripts, and are regarded rightly as interpolations. These will be distinguished by small capitals. Oh, okay, so when we get to the shouty text,
Yeah.
we know this is bullshit. Or an interpolation. The page of the Coptic manuscript on which these correspondences begins is fragmentary at the beginning. 1.1, the lawless one. The reward, they in. A prayer, every one and everyone. Paul, again, or together. And I'll let you take it from there. Because I'm an asshole. 1.7.
1.7 prayed that a messenger be sent to Philippi, for the rich Corinthian leathers were in great trouble concerning Paul, that he would depart out of the world before it was time. For there were certain men come to Corinth, Simon and Cleobius, saying, There is no resurrection of the flesh, but that of the Spirit only, and that the body of man is not the creation of God, and also concerning the world, that God did not create it. Wow, we're getting into some really esoteric heresies. And that God knoweth not the world, and that Jesus Christ was not crucified, but it was in appearance, i.e., but only in appearance, and that lie was not born of Mary, nor of the seed of David, and in a word there were many things which they had taught in Corinth, deceiving many other men, and deceiving also themselves. When therefore the Corinthians had heard that Paul was at Philippi, they sent a letter unto Paul to Macedonia by Threpetus and Eutychus the deacons. And the letter was after this manner.
Stephanus and the elders, presbyters, that were with him, even Daphnis and Eubulus and Theophilus and Xenon, which is spelled with a Z, it's not the glowing gas, unto Paul, their brothers eternal, greeting in the Lord. There have come unto Corinth 2 men, Simon and Cleobius, who are overthrowing the faith of many with evil, corrupt words, which do thou prove and examine. For we have never heard such words from thee nor from the other apostles, but all that we have received from thee or from them that we do hold fast. Since therefore the Lord hath had mercy on us, that while thou art still in the flesh, we may hear these things again from thee. If it be possible, either come unto us or write unto us. For we believe, according as it hath been revealed unto Theano, that the Lord hath delivered thee out of the hand of the lawless one. Enemy, Leon.
That's it for this episode of The Atheist in the Trailer Park Podcast. You can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Stitcher, as well as just about anywhere else podcasts can be found. Many of the episodes are also on YouTube. Follow the show on Twitter. @TParkAtheist is the show's Twitter handle. It's on Facebook at facebook.com/trailerparkatheist.com. If you happen to like the podcast, please rate it on iTunes. If you'd like to support the podcast, there's a donate button on the show notes page. You can support it via Patreon at patreon.com/TNTucker. Thanks for listening.
Say goodnight, Fuzz-Nuts.
All I know is this violates every canon of respectable broadcasting.
Damned cat.